Apple said he left religion because of Biafra's agony. Steve Jobs is the late American magnate and renowned founder of Apple products like iPhone before his death, and it will seem surprising to see his name appear alongside Nigeria. But in 1968, during the first year of the Nigerian Civil War, Steve Jobs, whose father was a Syrian immigrant from Aleppo, saw pictures of malnourished children in Nigeria that would change his life forever. And his journey away from religion began after seeing pictures of two kids emblazoned on the cover of Life magazine. Jobs, who was just 13 at that time and living with his adopted parents, accosted his Lutheran church pastor with the magazine and wanted to be made sure if God actually knows everything and does everything in his acclaimed capacity as omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, to which the preacher replied in the affirmative. As a teenager, it would appear Jobs wasn't patient enough to understand why God would permit evil to happen to kids, and the preacher didn't do enough to enlighten Jobs about the inevitability of the occurrence of the good and evil. Jobs walked out of the door in 1968 during the Nigerian Civil War and never looked back till his death in 2011. Even though they were not fervent about their faith, Job's parents wanted him to live a religious upbringing, so they took him to the Lutheran church most Sundays. That came to an end when he was 13. In July 1968, Life magazine published a shocking cover showing a pair of starving children in Biafra. Jobs took it to Sunday school and confronted the church's pastor, saying, "If I raise my finger, will God know which one I'm going to raise before I do it?" The pastor answered, "Yes, God knows everything." Jobs then pulled out the Life cover and asked, "Well, does God know about this and what's going to happen to those children?" Steve said, "I know you don't understand, but yes, God knows everything." Jobs announced that he didn't want to have anything to do with worshipping such a God, and he never went back to church. Jobs was an American inventor, designer, and entrepreneur who was the co-founder, chief executive, and chairman of Apple Computer. Apple's revolutionary products, which include the iPod, iPhone, and iPad, are now seen as dictating the evolution of modern technology. Born in 1955 to two University of Wisconsin graduate students who gave him up for adoption, Jobs was smart but directionless, dropping out of school and experimenting with different pursuits before co-founding Apple with Steve Wozniak in 1976. Jobs left the company in 1985, launching Pixar Animation Studios, then returned to Apple more than a decade later. Jobs died in 2011 following a long battle with pancreatic cancer. Jobs was born to Joanne Shibu, later Joanne Simpson, and Abdul Fattah John Jandali, two University of Wisconsin graduate students. The couple gave up their unnamed son for adoption. Jobs' father, Jandali, was a Syrian political science professor. His mother, Shibu, worked as a speech therapist. Shortly after Jobs was placed for adoption, his biological parents married and had another child, Mona Simpson. It was not until Jobs was 27 years that he was able to uncover information about his biological parents. As an infant, Jobs was adopted by Clara and Paul Jobs and named Stephen Paul Jobs. Clara worked as an accountant and Paul was a Coast Guard veteran and machinist. His early life. Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. He lived with his adoptive family in Mountain View, California, with the area that would later become known as Silicon Valley. As a boy, Jobs and his father worked on electronics in the family garage. Paul showed his son how to take part of reconstruct electronics, a hobby that instilled confidence, tenacity, and mechanical prowess in young Jobs. Steve Jobs' education and college. While Jobs was Always an intelligent and innovative thinker, his youth was riddled with frustrations over formal schooling. Jobs was a prankster in elementary school due to boredom, and his fourth grade teacher needed to bribe him to study. Jobs tested so well, however, that administrators wanted to skip him ahead or to high school, a proposal that his parents declined. After his high school, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. Lacking direction, he dropped out of college after 6 months and spent the next 18 months dropping in on creative classes at the school. Jobs later recounted how one course in calligraphy developed his love of typography. In 1974, Jobs took a position as a video game designer with Atari. Several months later, he left the company to find spiritual enlightenment in India, traveling further and experimenting with psychedelic drugs. Back when Jobs was enrolled at Olmsted High School, he was introduced to his future partner and co-founder of Apple Computer, Wozniak, who was attending the University of California, Berkeley. In a 2007 interview with PC World, Wozniak spoke about why he and Jobs clicked so well, saying, "We both loved electronics and the way we used to hook up digital chips." Wozniak said, "Very few people, especially back then, had an idea what chips were, how they worked, and what they could do. I had designed many computers, so I was ahead of him in electronics and computer design, but we still had common interests. We both had pretty much sort of an independent attitude about things in the world." In 1976, when Jobs was just 21, he and Wozniak started Apple Computer in the Jobs family garage. Then they funded their entrepreneurial venture by Jobs selling his Volkswagen Bus and Wozniak selling his beloved scientific calculator. Jobs and Wozniak are credited with revolutionizing the computer industry with Apple by democratizing the technology and making machines smaller, cheaper, intuitive, and accessible to everyday consumers. Wozniak conceived of a series of user-friendly personal computers, and with Jobs in charge of marketing, Apple initially marketed the computers for $666.66 each. I earned the corporation around $774,000. 3 years after the release of Apple's second model, the Apple II, the company's sales increased by 700% to $139 million. In 1980, Apple Computer became a publicly traded company with a market value of $1.2 billion by the end of its very first day of trading. Jobs looked to marketing expert John Sculley of Pepsi Cola to take over the role of CEO for Apple. The next several products from Apple suffered significant design flaws, however, resulting in recalls and consumer disappointments. IBM suddenly surpassed Apple in sales, and Apple had to compete with an IBM and PC-dominated business world. In 1984, Apple released the Macintosh, marketing the computer as a piece of counterculture lifestyle, romantic, youthful, creative, but despite positive sales and performance superior to IBM's PCs, the Macintosh was still not IBM compatible. Scully believed Jobs was hurting Apple, and the company's executives began to phase him out. Not actually having had an official title with the company he co-founded, Jobs was pushed into a more marginalized position and thus left Apple in 1985. After leaving Apple in 1985, Jobs began a new hardware and software enterprise called Nest Incorporated. The company floundered in its attempt to sell its specialized operating system to mainstream America, and Apple eventually bought the company in 1996 for $429 million. In 1997, Jobs returned to his post as Apple's CEO, just as Jobs instigated Apple's success in the 1970s. He is credited with revitalizing the company in the 1990s. With a new management team, altered stock options, and a self-imposed annual salary of $1 a year, Jobs puts Apple back on track. Jobs' indigenous products like the iMac, effective branding campaigns, and stylish designs caught the attention of consumers once again. In the ensuing years, Apple introduced such revolutionary products as the MacBook Air, iPod, and iPhone, all of which dictated the evolution of technology. Almost immediately after Apple released a new product, competitors scrambled to produce comparable technologies. Apple's quarterly report improved significantly in 2007. Stocks were worth $199.99 a share, a record-breaking number at that time, and the company boasted a staggering $1.58 billion profit and $18 billion surplus in the bank and zero debt. In 2008, Apple became the second biggest music retailer in America, second only to Walmart, fueled by iTunes and iPod sales. Apple has also been ranked number one on Fortune magazine's list of America's most admired companies, as well as number one among Fortune 500 companies for returns to shareholders. In 2011, Forbes estimated the majority of Jobs' net worth at around $6.5 billion to $7 billion from his sale of Pixar to the Walt Disney Company in 2006. However, if Jobs had not sold his Apple shares in 1985 when he left the company he founded and helmed for over a decade, his net worth would have been a staggering $36 billion. Jobs and Lauren Powell married on March 18, 1991. The pair met in the early 1990s at Stanford Business School, where Powell was an MBA student. They lived together in Palo Alto, California, with their three children, Reed, Erin, and Eve. Jobs also fathered a daughter, Lisa, with girlfriend Kristen Brenner in 1978 when he was 23. He denied paternity of his daughter in court documents, claiming he was sterile. Lisa Brenner Jobs later wrote off her childhood and relationship with Jobs in her book Small Fry, published in 2018. In 1980, Lisa wrote, DNA tests revealed that she and Jobs were a match, and he was required to begin making paternity payments to her financially struggling mother. Jobs did not initiate a relationship with his daughter until she was 7 years old. When she was a teenager, Lisa came to live with her father. Wow, this source is from Steve Jobs and biography.com. Wow, this is really a very intense article, put together. But in the long run, the reason why this whole thing came up, it's the main thing is the way he saw children who were published in the magazine in those days, and he was thinking that how could evil be happening to children, and it was as a result of a Biafra war. And I think we all now have an idea of what really transpired, and since then he didn't really go back to God because he was not more educated, enlightened on how God works and how spiritual things work, and that was the end, and he couldn't really go back. So what really prompted is not going back to God was how Biafran children were really treated as at that time that he just came across. And you can imagine that the Biafra war went around the world. Everybody knows what happened. Everybody knew what happened. Everybody still knows what happened at that particular time. And you can imagine as at then, we are still having this marginalization, and people don't even want to give a damn concerning what is still happening to Biafra. I think that's just what happened in a nutshell. So the end part of what we read is, about his biography, what happened, and his his biography, honestly, it's just biography and all of that. But the main thing is that he caught up with God because, he caught up with God because of the way he was being explained to on how really God works, and seeing the Biafran children, and that was just the end of his relationship with God at the age of 13. And we have some reactions are in this place. Someone say all these facts made Nigerian government stopped teaching stop the teaching of history in schools because they are wicked and heartless to Igbos, but history will never die. The world knows the real truth. Someone say, I only believe in God, not pastors. I don't trust any pastors. The suffering in Biafra continues today. Someone say, when I remember the killing of our people by Nigerian government, I shed tears. Hashtag Nigeria will never know peace, evil country. Wow. Every time I heard about evil against Igbos, IPOB, and Biafras, these groups of holy people have never and will never have committed an evil at all. What a very holy, honest, and lovely people that are so innocent but only suffering for doing no wrong things. The same way devil is innocent of all that is level against him. No be so. And what the hope and the future of those kids could be, I think that way sometimes, as if most woman was not created for a purpose. Some people was just created for eternal pain. Wow. Those that starve millions of innocent Biafran children to death must face the wrath of God and will never go unpunished. Sure, these pastors are money conscious, but who knows how we came into this world? Him alone, the Alpha and Omega, the bright and morning star. Someone say you are right. Where is that God? God is real, but religion is man-made and fake. Steve Jobs will be answering questions and rotting in hell. That's what somebody is saying. So guys, I'd like to hear from you what you think about this whole thing. Leave your comments below. Thank you very much. Bye.